Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and welcome to this video. So we're going to be doing video 3. So let me actually push up the code from the previous video first. So pushy update. Pushy is a custom command on my computer. Update origin video 2 just allows me to kind of do all the git stuff really quick. And let me make a new branch. Git checkout -b video 3. Okay, so now we're working on video 3, and today's topic is going to be props. Okay, props, really, which is short for properties. Basically, that means you can define data that you can pass to a component. Okay, so the way it works is that every function that's a component receives one argument, and one argument only. It receives an object that we usually will refer to as props. Okay, so basically we always just define props in the function if you want to use props. Okay, and this object will have any properties that we pass in there. So we're going to assume that in that props object, we're going to have a property called text. Okay, I'm just making that up. And the cool thing is I can inject that. You can inject variables in your JSX by using the curly brackets. Okay, so when I wrap that in curly brackets like this, it's going to take whatever's in there, assuming it's a JavaScript expression, and then take the result of that expression and inject it into the HTML. But where is this props.text coming from? Well, if I go back to my app.js, notice here I'm using the button. To define a property in props, you just basically go in here and just say text equals hello. Text equals cheese. So you notice I'm just saying text equals, and then I just give it the value of the prop. Bread. Okay, now if I go back to and I run the server again, npm run start. Okay, we run that. And we notice that each button has the different text. So even though they're all using the same component, each one is receiving a different version of the text prop. Okay, and I can write as many props as I want. Okay, now what you really should do is you should download something called React DevTools. It's a Chrome extension, React DevTools. Okay, so you want to download React Developer Tools. This is going to make your life a lot easier. Let's just show you what they do. Is if you open up your developer tools, you'll see the section called components. And here you can actually see all the components on your page and the way they relate to each other, like which components are nested inside of what other components. And see, now I can click on the buttons and I can see their props. And I can see right now this has a text prop that has the value of hello. This one has this value. This one has this value. And this is where like making components becomes a lot more useful, because I can pass the props needed, and then I can use that same like button or like a navigation bar with different links, because I pass the data I need to pass in as a prop. And then the component just works, and it can work in multiple different contexts. So I can have the same button that looks the exact same way throughout my application without having to like restyle or rebuild it, or a carousel multiple times with different images each time, because I can pass the things that are different as props. Okay, so generally always what you want to think about it is when you write a component, think about it like the stuff that you hard code is the stuff that never changes, and the stuff that can change generally is represented by a prop. So that way it can be passed in when the component is used. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to write like, let's create like an image component. Okay, so let's go back to components. I'll create like new file. We'll just say image.js. Okay, and this time I'm not going to create a CSS file just to show you something else. Function image. We're going to receive props. And then what we're going to return is a image tag. And again, images receive a source property. And what I can do is I can actually inject variables. So in this case, we'll say like props.source. Okay, in there. But then I can also do other things like style it. So what you can do is you can do what's called inline styling. So you define a style prop. And then what you're doing is you're passing this object, and you can put all your styles in there. Okay, and then let me just put the self-closing end on that. Okay, but let's say I want to define this image as width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels. Okay, and then I want to do like object fit. And the property I want is, and notice like I didn't write object dash fit like I would in CSS. I wrote object fit in camel case. So all the properties, all your CSS properties in JavaScript are always camel case. Keep that in mind. Okay, and object fit, I'm going to do cover, and it wants an alt prop, so it just wants me to add like an alt prop, just being like alt, and then I'll use props for that as well. So we'll say props.alt. Okay, and now see I have this like this image component that I can now use. Now make sure I got to export it. Export default image. Okay, but again, this props object is just basically the things that I define when I use the component. So if I go back to app and let's import the image component. So again, you always got to import it where you plan on using it. Import image. Okay, we're gonna have like 3 images. So we'll say like, you know, image, and again, there's 2 properties that we defined. Source. So it'll be source equals, I can just pass a string actually, and alt, you can just pass a string. Okay, so let me go find a picture. So images.google.com, and we'll just look up puppy. Okay, so there's an adorable little puppy. I'm going to copy the image address. Now I can put this just right in there, and then alt, we'll just say puppy. Okay, let me make sure I close the image tag. And then if I go back to the app, see, there's the puppy. And notice, see, it's a 200 by 200 rectangle because that's what I did in that CSS. Okay, and it's a square with the puppy. Okay, and I can reuse that image. And see, basically, I never hard-coded the puppy into the component itself. It's just picking on it from props. And how does it know that's the props.source property? Because when I wrote the component, I added a prop called source. Source equals whatever, alt equals whatever, and all that data gets passed in that props object to the component being rendered. Okay, so you always know anytime you have these key values in the tag, those get passed in as props to the underlying component. Okay. Cool. Now another neat thing you can do is that props doesn't have to be a string. Okay, you can pass in like an object. So I can be like props or an array. So I can be like props, or we'll just say, hey, an array equals, and you have to put square brackets. For anything other than a string, you have to put square brackets around it. But then I can put in here like an array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's not going to affect anything on the screen because I'm not using it in the component. But if I go in here in DevTools and I click on the right button, I can see that the button does have that prop. So that data is stored in that component. Okay, we can make use of it. Okay, so you can pass literally any kind of data. You can pass functions, you can pass numbers, booleans, classes, literally anything you can imagine, you can pass down as a prop. It's just another way of sort of transmitting, because again, now each of these components are kind of like walled gardens. So the only way they're able to communicate with each other is by passing data via props. Okay, and that's always generally going to be sort of like the toughest thing to wrap your head around with React over time. It's just kind of like the ability to move data from component to component. When each component's kind of its own walled garden, how do you move the data around? That's usually where like a lot of struggle is in the beginning. Okay, one other thing I want to show you is that there's a special prop called children. So let's say I were to rewrite another, like let's say I'm going to delete these buttons, and I were to write button hello world. Notice I didn't actually write a prop this time. I just put text in between the opening and closing tag. Well, anything that's between the opening and closing tag gets passed in as a prop called children. So if I go over here and I look up that button, I can see here under children, there's a prop called children, and it's the string of hello world. So I can use that to my advantage and go back to edit my button component, and instead of using like props.text, I can use props.children. Okay, and this is nice because now I can because it's nicer for me to write the button like this. Like this just feels more natural to put the text in between the opening and closing tag, but it still works. See, it says hello world. Okay, so that's what the children prop is. So literally anything in the middle. Like if you have multiple things in between, then it'll give you like an array of things. So just keep in mind like that props.children prop can be either an array of things or it can be a single thing depending on what you put in the middle between the opening and closing tags. And again, you can inject anything using the curly brackets in your JSX. So in your JSX, I could be like right here and just say, hey, I want to inject the result of 1 plus 1. And that's going to be 2. So I should see like a button that says 2 on it. Okay, so again, all these curly brackets are doing is they're just saying, hey, here's a JavaScript expression, evaluate it, please. And then inject that in the resulting output. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more clarity. I would recommend just taking a moment to play with what we've learned so far and getting used to it. And we'll come back in the next video and talk about state. Have a great day and enjoy.